Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, in this episode, I want to talk about something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and that is how I've changed as a person, inside and out, since I became a Christian. Because when we become a Christian, it's not about forcing change. In some cases, it might be a little hard, a little more difficult to change certain things about your life than others. I've had some difficulties, as you all know. If you've watched any of my previous videos, I've had certain difficulties, like in my writing area, just different things. There's always going to be something that's going to be a little difficult to change. But for the most part, when you truly, with your whole heart, seek God and want a relationship with Him, and you finally make that decision to give your life to Him, it's not about forcing change. Because when you feel the Holy Spirit, when you feel God in your life, when you know that He's working, His hands are moving in your life and changing your circumstances, these changes that I speak of start to happen without you even realizing it in some cases. And that has been the case with me. A lot of things that I didn't even really have to contemplate for very long. I just decided one day, okay, I'm going to change this because why was I doing this? Or I'm going to, change this aspect of my personality because it just feels so right. And I'm going to talk about some of those things today. The first one on my list is language and tone. I grew up from a teenager being around people who cursed all the time. I cursed all the time up until I met my husband in 2015. I had a curse word in every other sentence. The F word was as much a part of my vocabulary as any word in the English language. So I grew up with a very vulgar tongue. And a lot of that is because I left home at 13 and I got mixed in with the wrong crowds. I did a lot of bad things, and generally that comes with all the bad things, cursing and smoking and drinking, and that's what I did, unfortunately. But even after I really, really toned down, I started having my kids, my first son, and I stopped hanging out with so-called friends and living the party life. I still carried that language with me, that bad language, because it was just part of how I spoke. And I didn't really, at the time, think that it was an issue. As long as I was being a good person, I can still cuss. No, I didn't even think of that. I didn't think of it at all. And when I met my husband and he said he didn't really like that kind of thing, I started to realize that, wow, it is really disrespectful. It's to be vulgar and to be loud as a woman, especially, it's just not becoming of us. And so my heart softened, of course, and out of respect for my husband, I stopped using curse words. One would slip every now and then, but then I would apologize and correct it, and I would feel so much better about myself. When I stopped cursing, I felt more like a woman should feel. I felt more feminine, and I thought to myself, wow, this is pretty amazing. Just not using curse words made me feel so much better about myself. And when you really think about it, cursing is very negative. We generally use a curse word in a negative way, but it has spilled over into using curse words even in a positive ways, which is unfortunate. I don't like cursing anymore. So I have definitely changed that about myself. And I can't imagine, like drinking and smoking, I can't imagine ever going back to doing that ever again. And the same thing is with tone. Now, I still have a little problem with tone. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm this soft-spoken young feminine woman or middle-aged feminine woman, and because you can hear it in my voice. And in all of my episodes, I'm still a little bit, I get a little excited, if you will. I do get loud. I try not to. It's It's just something that it's an ongoing thing that I'm still trying to change. And I feel good about myself even changing. It's not something that I feel like I'm being forced to change because I became a Christian. It makes me feel better when I'm more soft-spoken and I choose the words carefully that I'm going to say. So even though I'm not quite there yet with the tone, it's just my personality. I'm just a little loud. I feel good that I'm at least trying to soften it a little bit more. And I have softened it drastically since I became a Christian and realized that to be soft-spoken and, kindness coming out of my mouth and softness coming out of my mouth is much more appropriate than loudness and vulgarity. And it just makes me feel better about myself regardless. So I'm actively trying to change my tone a little bit more. But I'm not going to change it so much that I'm so soft-spoken that I'm like a completely different person. I'm always going to be me, but I just want to better certain things about myself. And as long as they make me feel better that I'm doing them and I don't feel like I'm being forced, then it's a good thing. But when you become a Christian and you want to live for Christ and you're trying to do everything to live for Christ, you start to realize that these things that seem so simple or insignificant, like the tone of your voice or the language that you speak, the words, the vulgar words and such, that you don't want to do that anymore. You don't want to curse. You don't want to be this loud, obnoxious woman. You want to be feminine. You want to be soft-spoken and kind-hearted and graceful in everything that you do. The next thing on my list is a big one for me, huge, and that is modest dress. My whole life, I hated dresses. I just cringed at the thought of having to put on a dress or a skirt. It was an absolute no for me. That was just not going to happen. I didn't even own a dress, except maybe when I was, before I became a teenager, I had a couple of dresses for funerals or something, but you would not catch me wearing a dress. I grew up wearing shorts and pants, and I was kind of tomboyish, I was a lot tomboyish, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. I mean, even as a Christian, there's nothing wrong with a woman being a little tomboyish and climbing trees or getting out and getting her hands dirty. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying that I did not like to wear feminine clothes. I hated it. The thought of it just made me cringe, like I said. But since I became a Christian, I have discovered this whole new world and this whole new feeling of being feminine. If language and tone helped me feel more feminine, then the way I dress helped me 100 times even more. Because as we know, the way we dress, it changes our personality. It changes the way people perceive us. If we're dressed very provocatively with things showing and stuff hanging out or whatever, then people perceive us a certain way. But I have come to love wearing dresses and skirts. But not just any dress and any skirt. I don't wear things that are too form-fitting anymore. I dress as modestly as I can, and that includes not wearing dresses that are too short. I'm still working toward acquiring more modest dresses that aren't cut too low in the chest. And I specifically wore this dress today because I wanted to point out that it really, for me, it's still a little bit too plunging. And I have several dresses that are like that, but I don't have a bunch of money just to go out and buy a new wardrobe at the moment. So I'm kind of sticking to what I wear, and I just try to, keep it close here. But I really would rather it be more, like up here instead of down here. It makes a big difference. An inch makes a big difference. But it's okay right now as long as I'm not showing anything. And I'm also actively trying to work toward having more modest dresses. But it also is like I said, the length of the dress. I don't want to wear anything that is above the knee. It's when you bend over or you sit down, you risk people seeing straight up your skirt or your dress, and that's just not good. And also, I just don't like pants. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with a woman wearing pants. I'm not going to be one of those people to say you shouldn't wear pants. I personally don't wear pants anymore. I just don't like it when it's hot all the time. So I try not to wear anything that is too restricting and tight against my skin because it just makes me that much more sweaty. I do still have a few pairs of pants, not jeans. I don't remember the last time I wore a pair of jeans. I realized how hot and how uncomfortable wearing jeans made me feel. And also I've gained a little weight, or about 20 pounds, if you want to call that a little. And also a lot of my pants and jeans just didn't fit me the same way anymore, so they were just super uncomfortable. But that just gave me even more reason to stop wearing them. A few pairs of these really big, baggy, balloony pants. They've got really big legs, and I don't think there's anything really wrong with those because they're not restricting at all. I just haven't really worn them yet because I haven't really found anything that like a top that looks good with them. And the only tops that I have right now that would look good with them are really tight, low-cut tops. So that's why I don't want to wear those. But yes, I'm trying my best to dress more modestly. It makes me feel more feminine. I love wearing dresses. I love the way I look in dresses. I love that it covers my skin. I love that it covers my body in areas that I don't want to show the world, and that nobody should show the world. It's nobody's business what's under your clothes except your husband's. So I feel so comfortable and secure wearing dresses and skirts and modest cuts, and I never thought that I would. And I look back when I was a teenager and a young adult, and I just think to myself, wow, I never thought I would see this day. But when I became a Christian, this is something that just naturally happened for me. I did see there was a few YouTube channels that I watched with these young ladies dressed modestly, and that did influence me a lot. But even before I saw those, I had already had that bug implanted in my mind about tossing out most of my wardrobe and just keeping the modest stuff and trying to, over time, buy a few pieces here and there to replace so I have enough clothes to wear. So yes, that is one thing that I have changed about myself, and that I love the change, is dressing more modestly. Now, the next thing on my list is something that I talked about also in a previous episode called practicing grace in all circumstances. And that is, I listen more instead of argue or become combative or argumentative. I have learned to, as a Christian, hold my tongue, and have realized that in doing so, it's not a submission thing, it's not a weakness, it is a strength to be able to avoid confrontation and just listen to what the other person has to say, instead of always having to be the one to get my words in, get my point across. And it just makes the situation more intense. It doesn't solve anything when we are just always trying to be the one to get the last word in. So I'm not going to elaborate too much on this one. You can go, like I said, to that episode, Practicing Grace in All Circumstances, and hear more about that. The next one on my list is my desire to be more motherly and a homemaker. Growing up, I've talked about a few times in episodes how I always admired my grandparents. My grandmother stayed in the home. She worked in the home by babysitting, and she made money that way, but she stayed in the home. She never even drove a car. I'm not saying we shouldn't drive cars, or I don't want to drive a car anymore. I'm just saying that back then, that was the thing. The woman would stay in the home and take care of the home, take care of the children while the husband went out and worked. And I have this strong desire to be a homemaker. And my whole life, I feel like society just kind of robbed that of me because I went down the wrong paths. I followed the wrong people. I was influenced by, the wrong people. And I spent most of my life just kind of catering to society. And I ended up, raising my kids by myself without a husband, without a loving marriage to raise my children in. And I that's very unfortunate because I was led astray and because I was so easily manipulated as a teenager, and I did bad things and I set myself up on the wrong course in life, that my children suffered because of it. I mean, they're great kids, don't get me wrong, and they're, like I say kids, but they're all adults now. But they grew up wonderfully. Everybody has their little issues and things, and I'm not saying they're perfect or anything. In my eyes, they're a little perfect, but my whole point is that I didn't get to raise them how I would have raised them had I known then what I know now. Mistake, not teaching them the Word of God and raising them in a Christian household. I will regret that probably until the day I die. So that has definitely become something that just came natural to me, becoming a Christian woman, is that I want to do these things. It's like this great desire, this need, and it feels so right. Another thing since becoming a Christian is that I'm still an introvert, but being an introvert before becoming a Christian was something completely different, because I didn't want anything to do with just about anybody. And I didn't like crowds. I still don't like crowds, those kinds of things. But I also didn't really want to go to church. I didn't want to have fellowship. I had this weird, even when I was like on the fence about being a Christian and I was going through my back and forth, I'm a Christian, I'm not a Christian moments, even at those times, I didn't want to go to church. I thought to myself, well, I don't need to go to church. I read the Bible and I can do it at home. I don't have to go to church. But now that I have fully committed my life to Christ, I feel this great desire to be a part of a church and have fellowship with other Christians and to get out into the world and to help spread the gospel and share the good news of Christ. So it's something else that just happened. It was never forced on me. I just feel this great desire for this. And when I say go to church, I don't want to just go on Sunday. I want to be a part of a church, involved in a church, and possibly use my skills, my graphic design and web building or writing and all these things that I can do on the computer. I would like to use them as a volunteer to help a church. So I want to do so many things, and fellowship now is so important to me. Whereas previously, before becoming a Christian, I didn't want anything to do with people. I was not a people person. Admittedly, like I said, I don't like large crowds. I don't like a lot of things, when it comes to, involving with people. But when it comes to fellowship, Christian fellowship, and when it comes to anything to do with Christ, I'm for it. But parties or concerts or anything like that, I'm still have no interest in that whatsoever. I stopped doing that many, many years ago. It's just too exhausting. It's stressful. I don't know how people can put themselves in those situations. Anyway, that's besides the point. I really would love to have fellowship. Another big one on my list that I have changed about my life since becoming a Christian, and I've talked about this in several episodes, so I will also just kind of reiterate instead of going and talking for a long time about it, is I have willingly and gladly changed the movies that I watch, the books that I read, and the TV shows that I watch. I have no desire to watch most secular stuff anymore. And in fact, my husband was watching something yesterday. It was just supposed to be like, a family movie, and there was so much cussing in it. And one character just constantly used GD. I won't repeat that, but I'm sure you know what that means. And every time I heard a cuss word, especially GD, or someone using Jesus Christ as like a curse, I would just flinch every time. And I realize now that I never really thought twice about that kind of thing before. I would watch so-called innocent movies and TV shows, and with all these sexual innuendo and just sexual everything, and never really thought it was that sexual, or the cursing, and never really thought the cursing was that big of a deal. But now when I see something or hear something like that, and even movies and TV shows that I used to watch, it just really gets my attention. And I look up at the TV and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I can't believe that I never saw anything wrong with this before. And it just goes to show how much we are blinded by evil and darkness when it's staring us right in the face and all we see is good. It can be the most innocent thing. There's some Disney movies with sexual references that are like put there, it seems like just for the adults, that the kids won't realize, they won't recognize it. But why do they need to put that in there? And I know someone might ask me for an example. I probably can come up with an example later, but I've seen a few like cartoons. I just can't remember what they were. I'm going to do a web search later, and maybe I'll do another episode in the future about stuff like this. But just, look it up yourself. And it's not just Disney movies, it's just cartoons that are made for children, but the creators purposely put, sexual things or adult things in that only adults would notice. And, I don't watch anything like that anymore. I watch a lot of YouTube channels that are Christian. When it comes to movies and TV now, I will go on Tubi TV, for instance, and then go to the faith category, and I watch stuff on there. Granted, a lot of it's not that great. It's a little cheesy, but I still like it. I feel like I get more from it than watching something with a bunch of cursing and sexual references or violence and just really terrible stuff that before I never saw anything wrong with. And the blind has been pulled off my eyes for sure. And I realize how influential this stuff is in our lives. And it just baffles me. My jaw is on the floor when I see some of these things, and I can look back on those moments and I never saw anything wrong with them. So yes, I have definitely changed that about myself. All the books in my Kindle app, I deleted everything that was secular in nature, and now I've just downloaded a bunch of free Christian books. There's so many on Amazon. You can get a lot of free books, and or I would get something that's 99 cents or whatever. And there's a couple of books that I've purchased at full price. But the point is, I've filled my Kindle with just Christian, and not just Christian, but stuff that's not too terrible. There's a lot of books out there that are not Christian, but they can be safe for Christian audiences. So I look for that kind of thing as well. That is something I've definitely changed since becoming a Christian, and I have had no problem changing it. It's one of those things that I thought in the beginning would be very hard for me to do away with, but it's amazing what Christ can do, because I have had absolutely no problem getting rid of so many things, and music as well. So the last one I'm going to talk about today is that I have no more depression, no more fear, and no more anxiety. This has also been probably the biggest change in my life. And God just took it away. He just took it all away. I've said this in several episodes as well, so again, I won't go too far with it. But when I came to Christ, when I started living for Christ, when I finally decided that I no longer want to live this secular life and cater to the enemy and his agenda, that God just took away all of my fears, all of my depression, all of my anxiety, 25-year-long battle with these things that dominated my life, completely dominated it. And that is the one thing that I can tell you is just so miraculous. It isn't a miracle how I can just switch from this 25 years of almost being on the crazy fence. I call it my crazy fence. And just a little bit more and I would have been just completely shoved over the edge. I remember one time when I had a nervous breakdown. It was about the middle of 2015. It was shortly before I met my husband, a couple months before I met my husband. And not even a couple months, it might have just been a few weeks. It was in 2015. And I went from 154 pounds down to 124 in just a few days. This is not an exaggeration. I'm not being dramatic. I lost that much weight in just a few days. I slept in my closet floor. My little dog, Aries, was there, always laying beside me. I was going through a terrible, terrible time. And I'm going to have to do a whole episode on this later because it is part of my Miracles and Signs series. So I'm not going to talk too much about it here in this episode, but be looking for that later. But I had a nervous breakdown and I was in a very, very bad place because I had lived my whole life, depressed and just riddled with anxiety. My whole world just completely dominated by it. And when I came to Christ, when I accepted Christ, he just took all of that away in a breath. And it's just another one of the advantages of becoming a Christian is that all of these things, this darkness that has surrounded you your whole life, in most cases, it will just disappear. I've heard it happen to other people before too. And I know it doesn't happen for everybody, but I think it will happen if you're one of those people who've lived with depression and anxiety your whole life and you genuinely want to have a relationship with Christ and live for him. I just feel in my heart he'll take it away from you. Just like that. So this is just, I might do another episode on this later because there's so many things about my life that I have changed. So many things that have just changed on their own since becoming a Christian. And I have never felt more confident, more joyful, and more content in my skin and in my life than I do now. Despite circumstances, living conditions, things that, I've talked about before, despite a lot of things, because we all have problems, we all have discomforts, we all have things that we wish we could change about ourselves. Despite the few things that I do deal with, I've never been so content. My mind has never been so open and so clear. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I am seeing the truth. And I'm just so happy to be where I am. And I still have a lot of progress to be made. There's still a lot of progress to be made. A lot of things that I'm working hard to change. And again, I'm not being forced. I'm doing it because I want to, because it makes me feel good about myself. And it makes me happy. But that's all I have for today. Please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Like and share this video and leave a comment. Tell me what's on your mind. Tell me your experience if you've recently come to Christ or whenever you came to Christ and you've in part of your life that you've changed or something that just changed for you without you even having to make any effort. I want to hear your story, so I would love to hear it. So may God bless you, your family, and your life.